Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending today's demo of web and mobile app testing with Perfecto. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a couple housekeeping items for our viewers. First, at the bottom of your audience console, you'll find a number of widgets for questions and additional resources. When you have questions for the presenter during the demo, click on the Q&A widget and submit your question. We will answer as many questions as possible at the end of the demo, and if we run out of time, we will get back to you via email. Also, if you need any tech support during the demo, please use the help option. With that, I will introduce our presenter for today's demo, Nico Kruger, Director of Global Sales Engineering here at Perfecto by Perforce. Nico, thanks for joining us on today's demo.
Thank you, Shelby, and thank you to everybody for joining us today. So what we want to cover today is looking at the Perfecto platform for those of you looking to do web and mobile app testing. Now, for most of you, that is cross-platform testing. So, for example, think a progressive web application that's running on a desktop browser, as well as running on, for example, a mobile phone or tablet. And then for you also looking to test your native applications, those on native iOS and native Android applications, both running on mobile as well as tablet devices. So how can we easily test that within the Perfecto platform? So firstly, as Shelby mentioned, my name is Nico Kruger. I've been with Perforce for over 13 years, really working with teams, helping them be successful for both their application lifecycle management, test automation, and helping them move things through the pipeline to get their products to market faster. And I'm happy to share a number of things with you today as we look at the Perfecto platform. So we'll be covering three things today. The first is we'll take a look at advanced test automation for these web and mobile apps. So again, as I mentioned, think of hybrid web apps for native browsers on your phones, your tablets, as well as those native applications for iOS and Android. We'll also take a look at when we start to execute our test automation, running at lots of scale, lots of results, how do we use methods inside the Perfecto platform to look at our result set and figure out what went wrong? Where are the pain points? Where are the defects? And how do we communicate and get that to our engineering team to fix them faster? And then finally, I'll run you through a guided tour of how you can actually do that in Perfecto using the platform itself. So first, let's look at how we can do some of this advanced automation for web and mobile apps. And to do this, we need to look at how the platform works, that is Perfecto. So Perfecto is a continuous testing platform. So at the very bottom of this slide, you can see really what we call the bottom layer, the foundation of the platform. And that is the capability to get access to the different browsers, the different desktops, the different devices, be it real mobile devices or virtual devices, in one place. Now, this typically is something that you want to just access. You don't have to worry or want to worry about setting it all up and having it running, maintaining the infrastructure, maintaining your Actium or Selenium grid. And that's what Perfecto does for you. It is a platform that is always on and always ready to run. So you don't have to worry about making sure that the latest operating systems are there. For example, iOS 14 or the latest Android operating system. You don't have to worry about making sure that the latest phones or tablets are available. And indeed, the same for those browser updates, which we know come out roughly every 2 or so weeks, depending on the type of browser. So having a platform that you can rely on is critical, and that is the base of what Perfecto allows you to get. Now, once we know we've got a great platform to execute upon, what we want to do is look at how we can take our test automation and really execute at scale. And so when we talk about advanced test automation, the first thing that comes to mind is not only running scripts, but also running more advanced scripts, meaning the same type of script running on different phones or different browsers, different screen sizes, but taking very advanced or more advanced scenarios and running that on a testing platform. So think of two-factor authentication. Think of multiple phones or devices talking to each other. Think of browser to devices having an interaction, for example, scanning a QR code. All those advanced scenarios where maybe you need to do some very advanced scripting. And Perfecto is the platform that allows you to do that. So the way we do that is allowing you to orchestrate using all the standard tools available in the market. So if you are executing tests in parallel using something like TestNG, Perfecto fully supports this. So you can run multiple tests at the same time. And what that does, it really cuts down your feedback loop. So a test that would have taken 5 minutes and you might have to run that on 20 devices, you can now take that same 20 devices and still just run the test in 5 minutes, and it'll cover all of those devices I mentioned, or browser combinations, whichever you need. And of course, as you start to build up and execute your test, you want to look at putting that into your pipeline. So what we call your CI/CD pipeline, and that could be using tools like Jenkins, Circle CI, or any other CI/CD tool set available on the market, which of course is supported by Perfecto. And what that'll do is it'll start to feed the results into the Perfecto platform. So your test will execute exceptionally fast on our data centers located globally. So if you have a requirement to execute your tests in different regions, be it Europe, North America, Asia Pacific, you can absolutely do so because Perfecto has that infrastructure that you can rely on. And then once we start to execute these tests, of course, we'll start to get results. And we'll get lots and lots of results. And this is where we can help you understand what this data is telling us. Where are the failures? Where are things breaking? And more importantly, where do I need to focus first to fix these specific failures so that I easily get to the root cause of any of these issues? And of course, we do this with our smart analytics engine, which is using machine learning and some AI in the background to understand what is breaking and why is it breaking, and grouping it for you to make it very easy to get to that root cause of the problem. Now, when we start to execute this, we want to do it at tremendous scale. Now, when you look at the slide up here, of course, we support all the frameworks in the market that are out there today. That includes Appium, Selenium, Espresso, XUI Test. It includes the execution frameworks. It includes the orchestration frameworks, as I've mentioned, TestNG, and also the leading CI tools in the market. And we've got a full list of integrations available on our website. If you don't see yours here, go look at our website. We have all the integrations documented on there for you. But when we talk a bit about test execution at scale, it is not only what you need to make sure you understand what is running, it is what does scale really mean? And so when we start to look at applications, it is not only covering a set of devices or a set of browsers, but covering different variations of these devices and browsers, and also including things like network connectivity, different network simulations, different applications running in the background, simulating different locations, doing more advanced testing like Touch ID, Face ID, two-factor authentication, so more advanced flows that you can start to build this cube or this test cube out of. And what that allows you to do, it allows you to actually catch some of those bugs that most teams today don't have the ability to catch because you simply don't have access to the sheer number of platform or platform combinations or devices or browsers to allow you to catch these bugs, and they often then slip into production. Now, the way Perfecto helps you catch these bugs and understand how they actually came to be is we'll give you a rich set of artifacts, and these artifacts are really, think of your video playback of the actual test. So if I'm running Selenium or Appium test, I can see video feedback of that test. I can see screenshots of every test. In fact, I can see the stack trace if something does go wrong. I can get the vitals. I can get my crash reports, log files, as well as my hard files for performance metrics if I want to see what API calls are causing the app or browser-based app to perform slow or might be causing some sort of defect. And this makes it very easy to get to the root cause and, of course, then figure out how I can go ahead and fix it. And we'll show you a bit about how that runs through the pipeline in our demo later on today. The next part is once we start to get all this data, we run our tests, how do we fix them quickly? Because that's really what we want to use this continuous testing platform for. The Perfecto platform allows me to execute at tremendous scale, but then I need to take this result, I need to figure out what the problem is. So the first thing, as I've mentioned, is we've got an AI and machine learning engine sitting at the back of Perfecto, and every time you execute your scripts, it'll go ahead and help identify the test execution result set and automatically does the grouping for you to understand what is the failure reason of this test. What happened? Why did it fail? Was it a pop-up, element not found? Did the application crash? So that you can have a focused approach on fixing issues and getting to them very quickly, because app crash really is unacceptable in today's market, so we want to focus on that one first. Simple fixes like element not found are more scripting-based issues that I can fix with my team. So it helps me focus on where we can focus our team members based on how they can solve these problems. Of course, when I start to run on different platforms, I will see my web application as well as my native application will behave differently depending on things like screen size, different browsers, different platforms. And Perfecto allows you to do an easy side-by-side comparison of different real or virtual devices. So as you can see on the slide, I've got a BDD test running at the bottom there, and I've got 4 devices that I actually ran a total of 5, as you can see there. 4 of those screenshots are visible, where it's comparing how this Google page actually looks and functions on different device types on the same step. And this is critical if you want to make sure that your application is performing and acting as it was designed to do. And of course, we can then go into each of those individual tests, and specifically if there's a failure, I can delve into the steps, each detailed step. I will see the stack trace, and we'll show you a bit about how this works in practice. But more importantly, once I know there's a problem and I've identified the problem, how do I get this into the hands of my developers and engineers to go ahead and fix? And we can do that by hitting a button and submitting this directly into an instance of Jira, for example, or if you use a different bug tracking tool. Again, you can look at our integrations page. We have many integrations available today. But again, for those of you using Jira, since it's quite popular, you can certainly just hit that button and get the defect directly into your backlog for your engineering team to start to look at. And this really cuts down the time to understand and then get it into the pipeline to get this fixed. And of course, like I said, once we start to run this at scale, we want to make sure that we do a couple of things. First of all, understand with our heat maps where the failures are, so we can understand where to focus and fix first. And also, as we start to get reliable tests, we want to make them part of our pipeline. So if you want to connect your CI/CD pipeline into the Perfecto CI dashboard, you can absolutely do so. And what this allows you to do is it allows you to allow your engineers to commit code using the repository management systems like a Git or Subversion or Perforce or even Surround. And once they commit that code, the tests will be executed, typically done by something like Jenkins as part of your pipeline. And those results will then feed back into my CI/CD dashboard. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Perfecto platform to understand how this works. So we've got the Perfecto platform open. Now today we're really going to focus on some of the advanced test automation capabilities within the platform. But of course, to give you the understanding of the capabilities in the device, let's first take a look at what are these platforms that support it within the Perfecto system. So Perfecto allows you to run your automated tests as well as for your manual testers to reproduce those steps or create the steps or run their manual tests in Perfecto as well. So the first thing is understanding that Perfecto has all the different devices available to you. These could be iOS or Android devices. They can have all the latest operating systems, the latest iPhones, the latest iOS or Android operating systems, and all of these are available the same day. So what this allows you to do is it allows you to be ready when your customers are using the latest devices. So making sure that when the new iPhone comes out, the day it's in your customer's hand, you will have them available in the Perfecto platform to be able to cut down that time for you to understand if there are any issues related to the latest device updates or even operating system updates. More importantly, you'll also find that on these devices, you can have, for example, real SIM cards. If you want SIM cards to test SMS notifications or two-factor authentication, for example, they allow audio injection, image injection, which are more advanced capabilities, typically used in automation. You can also have these devices spread out globally. So we have over 10 data centers located across the world. And in my example, I have a couple in North America, Germany, Canada, but we have those all over the world, so you can access these devices where you need them. We also allow you to do the same for our browser-based applications. So if I need a mobile device to test a web app or a native app, I can do so. We also allow you to test your web-based applications. Again, you can do this in a manual mode or indeed use them in your automation using, for example, Selenium or any other framework out there. Again, we allow you to test on real Macintosh devices. So again, you can pick the Mac, different type of operating systems on these Mac devices, and the different browsers on them, including for Windows 10, 8, and so on. We also support the latest browser releases once they're available, and typically browsers update every 2 weeks or so. So Keeping up to date with these for many companies is a struggle. If you use Perfecto, we'll take care of it. So as soon as the latest version is out, it'll be ready for you to use. And in fact, if you want to get access to the beta version, we also allow that within the Perfecto platform. So again, you'll be ready when your customers are ready to run these. Okay, but let's take a look at some of these devices and what are the things that I can typically do on some of these devices. So for example, if I want to open an iPhone, I can go ahead and do so. I can also go ahead and open up multiple devices at the same time. So if I want to go pick a different device to go and open up, maybe a Google Pixel device, I can go ahead and do so as well. And what this allows me to do is it allows me to interact with this device. Okay, and this is typically for your manual scenarios. What we want to do today is focus really on how do we do some of the more advanced automation capabilities. So what we'll do is we'll take a scenario, and I'll run you through how you can do that in the manual mode, and then we'll start to execute that using some of the automation capabilities within Perfecto. So imagine I have this device open over here. Of course, on this device, I can install any application either from the App Store or if it's a locally compiled application that's not publicly available yet, of course, I can bring this into the Perfecto system. Perfecto also allows me to do some of the advanced automation, for example, image injection, think of barcode, QR code scanning, check scanning, or any capability in both manual and automation mode where I need to access the camera and get an image scanned onto this device. It also allows me to inject audio if I want to test, for example, audio quality, which is an advanced capability within the Perfecto platform, allowing to get what we call a MOS score, or the quality of the audio playing back on a real device. It also allows more advanced features like Face ID, Touch ID, depending on the device type and what that device supports within the system. So again, you can install the application, and we'll instrument those applications so when they execute, that you can go ahead and if your application supports things like Touch ID, Face ID, you can go ahead and utilize those capabilities. Again, we also support simulating location. So if you want to mark location, if we want to go to maybe London or Sydney or Hong Kong or, California, we can simulate these locations within the Perfecto platform. And you can do this in both a manual test as well as your automated test, which we'll show you a bit later on. Again, we can also simulate what we call real user profile. So if I want to simulate slower network conditions or faster network conditions or latency, packet drops, and how my application will respond, we allow you to do that inside of Perfecto as well. But typically when we're doing test automation and some of the advanced scenarios, what you sometimes need to do is you need to have this device be connected to your computer as a developer. You want to typically plug it into a USB port on your computer so you can execute a specific device. Now, Perfecto allows you to do that using the concept, what we call Dev Tunnel. And think of Dev Tunnel as connecting this device you see in front of you to my computer with a very long USB cable going all the way to the data center and back to my computer. But of course, with technology, we can now simulate this or create that connection between the cloud device and my local computer, allowing me, for example, to open up Xcode or my IntelliJ IDE and access that device as if it is a local device on my machine. And this is a great way to do some of the advanced automation you may want to do. The next part of this, of course, is if I need to go ahead and test an application, for example, a web app that's running on my local machine and I'm debugging it, so I need to access a URL that's not publicly available. It might be internal to my organization or to my machine. How can I go ahead and do that? Perfecto calls that the P-Connect or Perfecto Connect Tunnel. And what this allows you to do is it allows you to create a tunnel between the cloud instance, that is Perfecto, and your local computer so that you can access a local resource. For example, in your browser, you might type localhost, and that will actually come to your computer where the tunnel is established with the Perfecto instance. And again, this is a great way for a developer to test a local compiled web app or application if it needs to come to an internal resource where some sort of connection or tunnel is required. Of course, Perfecto allows, with our enterprise cloud to create back-end VPN. So if you have internal applications that are only accessible internally, you can use our enterprise cloud capabilities to create dedicated VPN tunnels between your enterprise instance and then, of course, your internal network. And again, this is very popular for our enterprise customers as well. Now, once we do this, we want to get some information on the device. So what is happening with my device log? We also want to know what's happening on the performance side. So what is the device doing? How is it responding? How is it acting to some of the applications running in the background? And we can get all those performance metrics from the Perfecto system as well. And a lot of times when we start to work on applications, we often want to identify what we call controls as we start to do our automation. And to get to those controls, we typically use a thing called an object spy. Now, object spy is the capability to go and find out what is the properties of this button so I can use it in my automation scripts. Now, Perfecto has a built-in object spy, which is great. It allows you to very quickly on any web app or native app, both iOS and Android, get to what this button is. And there I can instantly see my smart locators, I can see the XPath, I can see the attributes that make up this button or control. So our object spy is built into the Perfecto platform, and it's a great way to help you get your advanced automation scripts running a lot faster. And again, this is something very, very useful within the Perfecto platform. Of course, we allow you to also look at a screen in a manual as well as an automated way to find, for example, text on a screen. We can also help you locate, for example, OCR, compare images side by side if you want to know visually, is this section of a screen or the whole screen, does it look the same as, for example, another screen that you might have saved up? And this is typically for screens that are responsive when you do a bit of visual testing for your applications. But how do we now take this and execute it at scale using some form of automation? So what we can go ahead right now is we'll stop these devices. We'll go ahead and execute them using an automated process. So let's go ahead and switch here to my IntelliJ IDE. So what I've got over here is I'm using a BDD framework called Quantum, which is open source, that is allowing me to articulate my test that I want to run without having to write necessarily Selenium or Appium script. Now, if you're running and writing pure Selenium or Appium code, you can absolutely connect those to Perfecto, or you can use Quantum or any other BDD framework to do so. So the first question is, how do I connect my Selenium, Appium, or whatever framework I'm using to the Perfecto cloud? Now, the way we do this is by providing the server endpoint or the remote server address over here. And as you can see over here, I'm connecting to my demo instance over here. And what this is pointing to is basically pointing to the Perfecto grid, which is either a Selenium or Appium grid. And all you have to do is to point to this URL, and that is where you will send your executions to. And that is how Perfecto will receive them and then execute them. Now, the way we authenticate this is simply using a security token. So you would go ahead and generate your token from the Perfecto cloud instance. And once you've got that Perfecto security token, you put that token into your script, and you can then execute them, from wherever you want. And that keeps them nice and secure. And if you want to change your token, you can absolutely do so as well to regenerate or delete an existing token. Now, once we've got our connection to the Perfecto platform established, the next part of what we need to do is we need to go ahead and set up how am I going to execute my test at scale. So if I take a single test and run it once, that's great. But what if I want to take that single test and run it against maybe 6 different devices or different browsers? How would I do that? Now, in this example, I'm using TestNG. And TestNG is my method to say, look, I want to run 3 different browsers over here, and I want to define the capabilities of what I want to access in Perfecto using the Perfecto capabilities. Okay, so I'm saying, look, I want a Windows 10 machine using Chrome in this data center using this screen size. And again, you can get these capabilities in the Perfecto UI as well. Now, I can do exactly the same thing if I'm testing on a real or a virtual mobile device. So I can actually test on virtual devices as well as real devices within the Perfecto system. And all of this is simply set up using my TestNG config file over here. Now, what I'm telling this file is that I want to run the @web test, which is this feature file over here that you can clearly see at the top. It says @web. And what this is my BDD test. I'm going to open up a couple of things. I'm going to test a browser-based application where I'm going to open and run a Google website. I'm also going to test the calculator app in this test. So let's go ahead and run this. So what I'm telling IntelliJ over here is that I want to go ahead and execute this test against the Perfecto cloud infrastructure. So what's going to happen now, this test will start to spin up, and we can actually visually see those in Perfecto. So if I click on Analyze Reports and click on Live Stream, you will instantly see all these different phones and browsers start to appear, and I can see them executing in real time for the different combinations that I selected. There you can see my calculator app is executing. I can see, for example, some test automation scripts running in Google. There you can see the phone we had open previously. And I can see these tests running from multiple users at the same time, which is great. So I can execute parallel execution at the same time for different devices. And again, this allows me to easily scale this up as I need it. So you can run hundreds and hundreds of concurrent tests at the same time. And what's going to happen now is as these tests execute, the results will be stored in Perfecto. And we'll take a look at those devices in a second. We'll also look at the feedback that comes back into IntelliJ. So as my tests are executing and finishing, we'll see over here that any failures will show up in my IntelliJ interface, and they'll also be captured inside of Perfecto, including all those activity logs, half files that I requested that I wanted to test. Now, again, part of this could be, for example, testing accessibility, which is also a capability you will find inside of the Perfecto platform. So let's take a look at how do we know when something's failed and we start to address this. So the first thing is when we run lots and lots of tests, your dashboard might start to look like this. You'll get thousands upon thousands of results. Where do you focus first? And so what our Heatmap allows you to do is it allows you to understand, and you can group things, for example, by the test, by the device model, by browsers, but it allows me to group things in such a manner that I can see where my failures are, the most failures, and I can focus in on those and start to understand how can I go ahead and fix those. Okay, so if I want to go see why are these iPhone 11 tests failed, I can click on this and I'll see a list of all those tests that are failing. Now, let's go ahead and look at all my tests that are running. And there you can see quite a few of my tests are still running and the feedback will start to come in. But let's take a look at this test over here. So remember, we configured our BDD test and we were running about 6 devices at the same time, or I think 5 or 6 devices at the same time. And we did have some failures over here. So we want to go find out what failed. But this screen allows me to compare side by side a single test that executed on browsers as well as phones, how it all looked step by step. And I can go through every step and it'll show me the screen, it'll show me any of my assertions. And of course, if there was a failure, I can then start to dig into that failure. So if I go into this failure now, I will have all my steps on the left-hand side. I will also then see a video with screenshots. So I can go ahead and watch this video as the steps started to play back. I can see, what happened and why did this failure occur, for example. Now, as an engineer, for me to find out why this is failing, I want to see the stack trace. And Perfecto gives you that straight into the UI. And this is great because I now instantly see what the problem is. And what I want to do is I want to take this information and send it to my engineering team so they can go ahead and fix this application. So I can hit the log button over here and create my Jira ticket instantly inside of the Jira application that'll push it into my developer's backlog. Okay, so we'll say sample bug over here. We'll include the report URL automatically into the Jira bug. What's going to happen now is this bug will now go ahead and it'll be inside of the Jira backlog. So it's gone into the backlog automatically, and your team can now start to work on it. One of the advanced features that Perfecto allows you to do is it allows you to execute tests again, but look to see if there's an open backlog item. If there's still a bug open and it hasn't been fixed, then you can skip this test, thereby not getting any results that you know should be a failure because, well, we haven't fixed that problem yet, so it's expected. Now, of course, around this test, I also want some information. So I want to know things about the environment that it executed on. So this was a Selenium script, as you can see. I want to see how long it executed. I want to see any variables or the information about the device. I can also link any of my code commits to this. So if I actually found a bug and I fixed it, I can actually link my code commit to this defect or bug. We also allow you to get the information or assets that will help you understand how to solve this problem. So that's the full test automation report, so the assertion report. We also provide you the videos, network files, vitals, device logs. And if you're testing native iOS and Android applications, we can also give you an accessibility report to tell you if there's any accessibility scanning issues on your native iOS and Android apps. And we use the built-in iOS and Android accessibility scanners that you get. And it's simply a flag you enable in your script to test accessibility on those applications. So once I've looked at my problem, I've logged the bug, I can go ahead and have my engineers go and fix that problem. And typically what we want to do is, once they commit the code again, we want to see the results come back into our CI/CD dashboard. So Perfecto allows you to integrate your Jenkins or CircleCI or any other CI application into Perfecto so that you can see the results as they execute come into Perfecto. So I can see every commit, if something ran, how long did it take to execute, what were the failures, how many of these failed, and if anything was blocked, I can go ahead and address those quite easily. And I can see if there's certain tests that fail a lot, and if anything else is breaking to an extent where I can quickly go ahead and identify and see what the problem was. If something is taking very long to execute, we need to go and address those tests to make sure that they execute in seconds and not in minutes or hours or whatever the case might be. Again, this makes it very, very easy for you to identify the problems, get the fast feedback into the Perfecto platform. So hopefully that gave you a good overview of the Perfecto platform and how it all works together. Again, Perfecto allows you to test both your web and native mobile applications in a single platform. We support Selenium, Appium, and various other frameworks on the market. You can connect your frameworks to the Perfecto platform. You can also use open source test automation tools that might exist. If they can execute on a Selenium or Appium grid, they can execute against the Perfecto platform. So hopefully that helps you understand some of the advanced capabilities Perfecto allows automation engineers to take advantage of. So Shelby, do we have any questions from the audience at this time that we can answer?
Sure. So the first question from the audience is, what are the differences between the private and public cloud?
Absolutely. So Perfecto allows both a couple of deployment models. The first is a private cloud, and the second is a public cloud deployment. We also have the concept of hybrid deployments for those that need to have devices in their offices or for our telecommunications customers. But for those of you looking for a wide variety of devices that are shared by many other people but are cleaned, are highly secure, our public cloud offering is great. If you are looking for a specific set of devices that are private to you, that can access maybe your internal resource via a dedicated VPN, then our private enterprise cloud is great for you. So you can also mix the two. So sometimes you want a combination of the two, whereby some devices you want private because of some data restriction or some capability that you want, but you also want to get the ability to test on a wide variety of devices that are available in our public cloud. So you can also mix the two, but we highly recommend speaking to us. And in fact, in the resource console, there's a link there where you can click on, and you can have a conversation with us where we can talk a bit about not only a demo of the platform, but help understand for your specific needs what would be the best option.
Awesome, thank you. The next question is, how are you running a single test on a browser and mobile device at the same time?
That's a great question. That's something that is, sometimes it seems very, very difficult to do. But the framework I was using in this example is called the Quantum Framework, and it's open source, so you can go ahead and get it on the Git repos and pull it down and start to use it. And it'll work on a local cloud, or it'll work on a Perfecto cloud. So it is truly open source, and what that framework does, it uses Selenium, Appium underneath, but it's got a built-in set of functions and capabilities that allow me to define what I want to test, and then it knows if this is a browser test or on a phone, and it'll go ahead and execute the right code to execute that specific step on either a real device, virtual device, or a browser in that instance. So I would highly recommend looking at Quantum as a method to do that. If you have some familiarity with, for example, some of the Java languages or even a BDD language that you might be using today.
All right, great. Next question is it possible to test and debug against a local instance of my application?
Absolutely, and that's a scenario most engineers or QA engineers will run into where you want to debug that. So there's a couple of options. Like I said, DevTunnel is a great option to create that USB type cable connection between the cloud device and your computer. And if you just need a connection or a tunnel between the device and your computer, if you want to access something on a local a web server or something like that, you can use the P-Connect tunnel to create that. Of course, they serve different purposes. So again, if you need help to understand which one is going to work better for you, feel free to reach out to us so we can guide you on the right option. Of course, it's all covered in our documentation as well. But those would be the two technologies that will help you understand and connect to a local device or to a local network tunnel to get access to whatever local resource it is you need.
All righty. I think the last question that we're going to have time for here is, we need to test two-factor authentication using a text message to a real phone number. Is this possible?
Absolutely, and that's a common scenario. In fact, we see some of our banking customers today where people can scan a QR code as they walk past something on a website, and then it opens up a registration process. We also see people, once they sign up, they have to get a one-time PIN, an OTP, or two-factor authentication message to a real device, and Perfecto allows you to do that. And in fact, what you can do is, if you want to have a single test that has two devices communicating, either doing QR codes or the one getting a text message and taking that value and using on a browser on a different phone, you can do that in Perfecto. And in fact, we have examples of how to do that if you need help doing that. But we see that as a very common flow for tests, specifically on sign-ups or authentication, for example, for banking or insurance applications. So you can absolutely do that within the Perfecto platform. And in fact, we support multiple devices interacting at the same time, so 2 or 3 or 4 devices in a single script, and we can help you understand how to do that within, for example, a Selenium or Appium script as well. So that's absolutely possible, but a very, very good question and a very common user flow we see being used with Perfecto.
Awesome, great. Well, that is all the time that we have for today. If we didn't get to your question, we will reach out to you via email to answer it as well. So thank you again to our audience for your attendance and participation today, and thank you to our presenter, Nico. We hope to see you next time.